In the year 2020, I started a podcast about movies. Some episodes occasionally focused on other media as well. As I dealt with threatening interdimensional beings, I eventually met my other self from another universe where all the stuff I talked about got delayed. As it turns out, the stories as me and my guests described them were presented very differently in that other universe. So I continued podcasting these recaps, which apparently sound like improvised reviews, to entertain listeners of that other universe while they waited for the new release dates. Some episodes even focused on content of years past that did not come out in that other universe for whatever reason. The year is 2022. The podcast is now bi-weekly, unless stated otherwise. My name is Steven Schinder, and you're listening to Delayed Replay. Hello, listeners. Welcome to the Season 3 premiere of Delayed Replay, back after a bit of a break. I'm your host, as always, Steven Schinder, and joining me once again, you may have heard him on the Season 2 finale back in December. It is Mr. Multiverse. How's it going, dude?
It's going good. I'm ready to tear this movie to shreds.
Yeah, you're just ready to chainsaw it to shreds, right?
Yeah. Oh, when you said, hey, can we review this movie? I was like, absolutely. I look forward to, dragging it through the mud.
Yeah, so we're talking about Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which came out last year in our universe. Of course, got delayed in that other universe and is coming out on Netflix, apparently. There might have been a different set of directors depending on the universe. That might account for some of the differences, the way that we're gonna talk about it, I guess. So just starting off, what are your experiences with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise? And feel free to say how you feel about each one.
I'm not the biggest Texas Chainsaw guy. If you were to ask me my favorite horror franchise, it'd be Halloween. But I do have a lot of love for that because the thing is, it's more about, you're not dealing with one killer, you're dealing with multiple killers. And I think, a lot of Hollywood forgets that, Leatherface is the face, pun not intended, of the family. He's not, the real perpetrator. It's the whole family. It's the cook. It's Nubbins. It's Chop Top. I could literally name all the family members right now. The franchise has this thing of, it really wants to be like the original film. But the problem is that movie is all the little elements for it, all the scenery, the cast, everything about that movie was like lightning in a bottle. You couldn't replicate it again. Even Tobe Hooper, the director of the film, knew he couldn't replicate it, and that's why Part 2 was such a deviation from it. And I really loved Part 2. It's this fun horror comedy, and I knew exactly what it was. But since then, every movie has tried to be the original film. And I'm like, you can't, even the remake in 2003, which I think was the last good Texas Chainsaw movie, knew it couldn't replicate it and went its own direction. And I think it was for the better for it. But, the problem is no one gets that movie cannot be replicated. And it's a franchise that's just irritating to watch because that movie is, even as a horror movie, you could look at it in an art house kind of way. There are just scenes where you could just pick apart in an art study, especially the room with all the bone art. It's hauntingly beautiful. There are just some excellent, this is just to deviate real quick, my cousin, who actually has directed films for film festivals, and she even, not to toot my own horn, but she actually got a major endorsement from Eli Roth.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. She's only 18. That's the crazy part. But the thing is that film, the cinematography in that film can be used as a template, how to study how to do cinematography in any movie. So it's just infuriating that these films are just trying and fail, like they miss the mark every time. Like, I get so pissed off every time they like, oh, we're going to go back to the original film. I'm like, oh, so you're going to drag that name through the mud again. And this movie's no different.
Yeah, you touched on a lot of things that I want to touch upon. I guess that's a redundant sentence, but you know what I mean. Yeah, the first movie is like you're right about Leatherface. You know, he's different from other slashers in that he's got this family and he is the face, but he also doesn't show his face, but he's that iconic image for the family. And the family dynamic is what makes it really interesting because he's basically an attack dog, but he's subservient to the cook, who's his father and or brother depending on the installment, and his brother the hitchhiker. And you know, he'll like back down when confronted by them, but he'll attack like anyone who's like coming on their turf.
Yeah. In a weird way, Leatherface is almost like the victim more than the slashers. I mean, more than the actual victims in the movie.
Yeah. This would be about like 10 or 9 or 8 years ago or something, but I remember entering one of those Goodreads giveaways where I ended up getting a copy of Chainsaw Confidential. It was this book by Gunnar Hansen, the original Leatherface himself, and he talked about the making of that original movie, and it sounded like it was kind of a nightmare. Like, it was super hot, and there was even a point where they wanted to like kill each other, and it's like such a well-written book, and he seems like an interesting guy. So yeah, that first film really does feel like lightning in the bottle. It's got a really low budget and it's all the better for it, in my opinion. And now with the second movie, you know, the one with Chop Top, and the cook is the only actor who returns, I believe. Originally Chop Top was just gonna be Nubbins, a hitchhiker, but they decided to just make him an entirely different character, his twin brother. And Bill Moseley is just so over the top cartoony. It's just so good.
Story of how he got that role?
Yeah, like he did a fan film called The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, right?
Yeah, and when they said, hey, we're going to shave your head bald, is that okay? He took he said, you can shave every part of me bald, and I will take this role.
Yeah. It kind of went that trend that Evil Dead was heading as well, you know, becoming a horror comedy. But like the second one, to me, it has its really funny moments, but it's not, I don't find it as funny as Evil Dead 2 because some of the screaming gets kind of annoying, like Temple of Doom levels of annoying to me, but it's definitely a cult hit. Like, it has like its own fan following. And then you get to the third movie, Leatherface Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, which kind of ignores the ending of the second movie but also has a cameo from someone from it. And because it's New Line Cinema, you would think that they would really amp it up because, you know, a company that has Nightmare on Elm Street, but it really feels watered down and more mainstream, kind of like what ended up happening with Army of Darkness. And they tried to make new family members who are kind of interesting in their own right, but still feel like they pale in comparison to the originals. And then you get the really weird, possibly deconstruction one, titled Return of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and then later retitled Texas Chainsaw Massacre The Next Generation, where Matthew McConaughey and a couple other characters are just like over the top berserk. Like, they're Leatherface's new family, but Leatherface is even more subservient and like does like even more annoying screaming, even more so than what the second movie has. It has like such a weird, bizarre ending. Like, they didn't know like what to do, like what plot they were doing. There's this conspiracy thing, like this Illuminati type stuff, and then like that was when like they knew they were in need of a reboot. With a remake, I actually really like the remake as well. Like, it's very different. It's a grittier Leatherface. It's not trying too hard to be the original. And I thought the prequel, The Beginning, was a decent prequel, even if it wasn't quite as good as its predecessor.
I think like a lot of why that movie's so carried, I think it's because Arlie Ermy literally carries that whole movie on his back.
Yeah, like the family members in that particular iteration are probably the most interesting ones since the first two, I would say. And then they ended up doing what like Halloween and I guess previous Texas Chainsaw sequels had kind of done to an extent, which was like ignore the previous sequels, only be a sequel to the original. You know, you got Texas Chainsaw 3D, which opens with a scene picking up right after the first movie, and I thought they did a cool job like trying to replicate the house. And you got Bill Moseley playing Drayton the cook in his stead because that actor passed away, and he did a nice way of honoring him. Gunnar Hansen had a cameo as well as the relatives. A lot more Sawyer family relatives than anyone expected, but they tried to do this weird thing of making the whole family the victims and the town the villains. And it's like, no, like these people killed people, and it's like it's kind of a guilty pleasure movie for me. It's really weird because even though it takes place in 2012, it feels like the way the characters look, how they've aged, it feels like they meant for it to be 20 or 25 years after. Like it's just such an enjoyable mess to me. And then the prequel after that, Leatherface, like I despise that prequel. Like it ruins the mystery of Leatherface. Like it just tries too much, and that was like another low point. But yeah.
In other words, it's not been fun. At least, like, you can point to the other slashers with their multiple movies and be like, yeah, that movie sucked, but that one was fun. With this one, it's like, oh, only two of them are good. Well, two, maybe three, depending on your taste.
Yeah, so now we get to the 2021 film, which, again, like, just ignores everything except for the original. And this really felt like it was like they watched Halloween 2018 and then thought, yeah, let's do that. Like, what was your reaction to all of this, like this particular take?
See, I was optimistic for a while about this movie because I really dug the director. Granted, Don't Breathe is not, but I loved his take on Evil Dead. And, Fede Alvarez, I think, is still a good director, and I think he could have been perfect with this, but I don't know if it was, like, the direction or, like, the studio or, hell, Kim Heinkel, who, yes, he was a screenwriter and cinematographer for the original Texas Chainsaw movie, but he also directed Next Generation. Literally, no.
Yeah, Fede Alvarez actually wrote the story for this one, or co-wrote it with Rodo Sayagues, or Sayag. Yeah, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but yeah.
I knew Kim Heinkel was involved with this, and for some reason my brain went scriptwriter, but I know he's heavily involved with this, so I don't know. Maybe a lot of the faults fall on Heinkel. The moment I heard, like, he was going to be attached to this movie, I went, oh, no.
Yeah, Kim is a producer on this. And yeah, like, I was watching this video of, like, behind the scenes of, like, the movie he directed, the fourth movie. And he said something along the lines of the first movie looks too low budget. And like, when I heard that, like, I don't know if that was his exact words, but it was something to that effect. But when I heard that, I was like, he completely missed the point of what made the original so great.
Yeah, the grittiness to it and almost like the documentary feel was like the beauty of it. Yeah, it was low budget, but like great directors, when they have a budget, they're like, I could have done more with less, and that's what Tobe Hooper did. In fact, he continued to do that with several movies. Hell, I mean, like, one of his major big-budgeted movies was, he didn't really have a major budget for a lot of his movies outside of Poltergeist and his remake of Invaders from Mars, which no one talks about. I feel bad about that. It's just so upsetting because the legacy of Texas Chainsaw is, like, for a lot of directors, horror or otherwise, point to that movie in some capacity being like, yeah, that was an inspiration to me, and it has such a wide cast who are sadly gone. Even Hooper's, that launched the career for one of the biggest horror directors.
This one tries to emulate the original by beginning with, like, that narration that is done by John Larroquette. Apparently he also did the narration for the remake, but yeah, like we get this opening crawl that basically says something along the lines of on August 18th, 1973, and then it like mentions what happened, and now it says how many years later it is, and how there's been like some silence. Like, what did you think of this approach to opening the movie this way?
Well, if I didn't see the trailer before I saw this movie, I'd have been more excited. When I saw, like, we'll get more into what certain elements of that trailer, but I you not, the moment I saw that trailer, I went, well, my optimism is officially dead.
Yeah, I think I know which moment you mean, and we'll get to that, yeah.
Yeah. But it was cool, because I honestly thought the narrator was gone.
Yeah, so did I. Like, I was surprised. I remember sitting in the theater thinking, oh, they got a really good sound alike. Do they get sound bites? And it's like, oh, no, he's still around, apparently.
Which was fine, but the problem is, like, the tone doesn't feel like, the thing is, like, the narration is good. It's good, it's just, like, the tone following, you gotta, like, line it up with the tone of that narrator, especially, like, okay, intro to the movie after, the first movie after the intro, bunch of pictures, rotting corpses, and done like quick flashes on a photograph. Here, literally kids laughing on a highway and driving down the road.
Yeah, like when that happened, I was like, oh, is this what's gonna be? I mean, I wasn't that surprised again because of the trailer, but it felt too, like, I don't dislike Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but the opening where it's like just the kids laughing in the car, it's always felt kind of off to me, but it felt even more so here, like, because I guess of the genre, in indie it was like a throwback type of movie, a period piece. Here it's like, it's today, early 2020s, and they got like these annoying like younger characters just laughing on the highway.
Yeah, and I mean, credit where credit is due. There are some nice shots here and there, like that opening scene of them driving down the road. I'm like, this is not actually badly shot. Too bad it's in the wrong freaking movie. I think like it was a cool idea to bring back the sunflowers, because for those who are thinking, oh, why are sunflowers so important? It was a nice juxtaposition because sunflowers were all in front of the Sawyer house. It was supposed to be like a juxtaposition of this kind of beauty hiding this like savagery and brutality behind it, like a mask.
Like it's supposed to make you feel comfortable on a subconscious level, and then you get like really unsettled when stuff goes down.
Yeah, like when you get past the flowers, it's death. And I was like, okay, sunflowers are back. I haven't seen those in a while. Nice to see them. And can we, Steve? We gotta talk about the main cast. Oh my.
Yeah, so we've got Melody, who's like she like does like business stuff, and she has a sister named Lila, who's a photographer. So I guess they're doing the thing of like artistic sibling and more workplace sibling, trying to do like a contrast. And Melody tries to bring her sister. They live in San Francisco and they're going to Harlow, Texas, along with their friends Dante and Ruth. I feel like they didn't have as much personality as I would have preferred, but what did you think?
Oh, didn't have enough personality. I thought they had no personality. You were just here to be cannon fodder. My thing with all of this is that there's no, and admittedly, it's a nitpick for all the Texas Chainsaw movies post the original. Well, the closest that got to that kind of this kind of dirty, you feel like you need a shower kind of filming, and like it just feels like you can almost feel the heat and like grossness of that kind of area. Here, it's too clean. Like you don't get that. Like that movie, like every time I watch Texas Chainsaw, I'm like, I need to take a shower now. Not because of like the graphic content. It's more like you just feel like the heat and the exhaustion the characters do. And again, the cinematography and the filming does justice to give you that kind of gross feeling, like living out in Texas that long. And here, you don't get that again. And it's almost like everyone is not. Everyone's just like, oh, it's so hot, and I'm like, it doesn't. I don't feel it. And you're all in an air conditioned car.
Yeah, with the original, I totally get what you mean. Like, I sort of feel like I've been walking in the dirt for a really long time, like they have, and I think the sound effects that they use in the original also help with making it feel hotter. Like, I don't know how to describe it, but there's this particular sound effect that makes me think of heat, and again, like the actors actually were like suffering from like heat. It was just like so super hot. Like what the actor who played Hitchhiker even said it felt worse than Vietnam apparently. And yeah, like they were, some of those reactions were very real, which is probably why it was the most effective, even if the practices were very questionable. Here, like with this new movie, it falls under uh, Hunter. It falls under like that category of Texas Chainsaw movies that feel too streamlined and watered down. It doesn't feel like it could be a documentary type of thing. Like it feels very artificial and trying to like reflect today, like be with the times and whatnot. And again, like some of this was really annoying to see after we got not only Halloween 2018 but also Terminator Dark Fate. I'm just like, not everyone who's been through a traumatic experience, like I know we want to empower them, but realistically not everyone who goes through that becomes this epic action person. And so this really took me some getting used to, and I'm still like getting used to it. I mean, the movie came out last year and I'm still like trying to like wrap my head around some of this.
So let's talk about Sally real quick, because yeah, the original actress Marilyn Burns had passed away, and that was already a red flag of bringing back Sally when the original actress is gone. Bringing it now, the actress they replaced her with is from the movie Mandy, which I liked. Here, it just feels like we're just ripping off Lori. Like, I have to remember, oh, that's Sally. Because the thing is, like, oh, like, couldn't she recover from her trauma like Lori did? I'm like, here's the difference, though. Lori, when she survived Michael, it was more out of grief, and she took that grief, and it was more like you could conceivably see how that grief can turn her into an alcoholic survivalist. For Sally, at the end of the movie, she was laughing hysterically and scared out of her mind. That's more like, I'm happy just to get out of there and never come back here. Like, that doesn't say I'm a survivalist. It's more like, oh God, I'm happy to be alive, and I'm probably going to a mental institution for about 10, 20 years.
Yeah, and the fourth movie even had a cameo from Marilyn Burns where she's a patient at a mental institution. So it's like that could be her. And the last time we saw her in one of these movies was a cameo as, I think her name was Verna. She was like Leatherface's aunt or something, or mother, something like that. And like she played that character very briefly in Texas Chainsaw 3D. But yeah, she's like passed away since then. And having this new actress, like as much as they, like it's much tougher for me to buy into this being the same character. If it was the same actress, then maybe then it'd at least be like, okay, they've at least got, the exact appearance of what that character would look like at this age. But since it's a different actress, there's more disconnect, like, to me.
It's just like, they even give her like almost the same clothing as Lori and the same like lines. I'm like, did y'all just like have that Steven, have you ever heard the meme of, you're like, hey, can I copy your homework? Yeah, just change a few things.
Yeah, that meme is a classic. This was very much that.
and like, I like the Halloween reboot franchise. It's very like, it's such a love letter to the original film. Here, this is not a love letter. This is like I hate you text you get 3 a.m. from your ex.
Yeah, it's the Taylor Swift revenge song.
Yeah, this is that, and like this is, and I get it. Like you want to do, but here's the thing: most of the actors are gone. Like, I do appreciate in this movie that there is like a Bill Moseley cameo. I'm like, oh, Bill, it's great to see you, man. I wish you weren't here. you deserve more. And he plays basically like in the film he plays like just a gas station owner. I think they try to insinuate that he's Drayton, but they kind of fail at it.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, Drayton would be dead by now because of how old he already was.
He even has he's like, oh, let me get my cousin Gunner. I'm like, don't do this movie. Don't do this.
Yeah, and there's even the scene where Leatherface, so Leatherface has been living among normal people, like not wearing the mask, but eventually, like, he wants to scratch that itch and he puts the mask back on. Like, he has it hidden in the wall. Apparently, it's like, oh, did that not decompose? Or, okay. And I guess we'll go like all over the place with the plot and whatever, because it's already a mess anyway. But the scene where the characters go to a concert and they go and see Buckethead, who played Leatherface in that, Tobe Hooper's son wanted to make this short film called All American Massacre, and so he got Buckethead to play Leatherface in that, and Bill Moseley played Chop Top again. Like, that scene at the Buckethead concert was really odd. Like, I've recently just started like going through his discography. He's made like over 300 albums apparently, and it sounds really cool, really avant-garde. So the music here sounded really amazing, but seeing Leatherface just like kill people through the crowd and jump onto the stage, go against Buckethead, it just felt like really weird. It felt like that scene in Texas Chainsaw 3D where they had Leatherface kill someone who was in a pig head mask, like from Saw, as if to say, oh, look at these two going at it together, and it just felt really gimmicky and out of place to me. Like, Sally wants revenge, and there's never really a moment where she seems like she suffered through trauma. Like, she feels just like action person. Like, there's never a hint from what I see that she like suffered. Like, there aren't really any introspective moments for her that reflect any of that.
Exactly. Again, they just want to do the Laurie thing, but don't want to add any of the, what does that mean to the character now? And oh god, characters all in, one of the scenes is literally I guess we could call them the main cast. I felt myself vomit saying that. Our heroes. And they're literally just ragging on a guy who's just trying to get gas for just owning a gun in his and he's like, dude, I do this because I'm he's like, dude, I'm an exterminator. And they're like, fine, it must be for your small dick. And I'm like, why are we following these characters? At least with the original cast and some of the cast we've seen in other films, it's like, yeah, they're just acting like kids, but they're not going out and purposely antagonizing people.
It's a very different form of, because not all the characters in the original were likable necessarily, but it felt like they made these ones less likable, and kind of like the Texas Chainsaw 3D thing. So those friends were very unlikable, that to the point where we're kind of rooting for some of them to be gone.
Just to cycle back on Leatherface real quick on something that just bothered me is the mask itself. How he looks like Clown from Slipknot. No, really. When I saw the first poster, I was like, "Is this an album cover for Slipknot?" Oh, it's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie poster.
Does look very odd. If someone showed me that poster without context, I would not think, oh, that's Leatherface. I would think maybe at best something partially inspired by Leatherface, but not Leatherface himself, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And the actor playing Leatherface, he does a good enough job. I'll say that. He does a good enough job. I mean, yeah, no one's going to compete to Hansen's work, work, and some of the other actors who've played Leatherface, but he's decent enough. He's decent enough as the character, but I feel like they later on, especially in the third act, they really don't make him sympathetic at all. The whole point is there's a sick sympathy you get from Leatherface because it feels more like he's the puppet of the family. He's the one. Because people forget, oh yeah, he's mentally ill and he's surrounded by a bunch of psychopaths. Of course he's going to be a little messed up.
Yeah, because in this movie, it seems like he's just been doing odd jobs for people trying to blend in, be normal, paint some houses, do some construction, and they like never say his name weirdly. Like, I guess they didn't want to commit, but yeah, when he puts the mask back on, he's basically just badass Leatherface gonna kill everyone. Like he doesn't have any family members whatsoever in this movie, like nobody he can be subservient to, and so it feels like they forgot that there was more than just Leatherface.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that bothers me with this movie is that has everyone forgot the whole tagline of the entire franchise is "The Saw is family"?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like Leatherface does not work unless there's one of his, at least another family member to play off of in some capacity, because that's what I think set him apart from like Freddy or Jason. Even though he couldn't talk, he had he had an interaction like a freaking, what's a good comparison, like he had Drayton to play off of, he had Nubbins to play off of, he had Chop Top, he had Tex.
Yeah, there was Grandpa as well.
Yeah, Grandpa. Literally, there were other characters that he could he was kind of like an extension of them. He was like their fist.
Yeah, like even in the remake where he's even more aggressive, he still has the family members to play off of.
My inner gorehound was satisfied, probably because all these characters are so horrible. And
yeah, and it's kind of weird because the original doesn't really have that much blood. Like there have been like documentaries and interviews and stuff about how like the audience imagines that there's more blood than there actually is, but in this one and in some of the other installments they throw in more blood, and it's just it makes it feel less authentic to me. And I know they try to I guess we'll talk about this scene, they try to be hip with the times, I guess, to feel more real when like he's in that crowd of people and they take out their cell phones and they're like, try anything and you're canceled, bro, and he starts killing people.
We gotta really talk about this scene, man, because this one, like when you sent me that, I was like, I literally threw up in my mouth.
Yeah.
Even the context of trying to make it a joke, it's bad because millennials are dumb. I'm like, oh, good for you. Here's a freaking gold star. Also, that's not the reaction someone would have for seeing a guy with a person's face as a mask and holding a bloody chainsaw. Their reaction would be running to the back of the bus and praying that he does not kill them.
Yeah, well, I do think like someone would take their phone out like discreetly to record what's going on as they're trying to escape, but to actually pause and like say that line, like it just didn't feel real to me.
That was like, wow. I was like one guy, like, yeah, you're right. One or two people would take out the phone to like record this and like show what's going on, either to like as evidence for the police or better put for their social media.
Right, like Facebook Live or Instagram Live, something like that.
Yeah. But yeah, at no point, like like I understand that these movies are not known for realism, but that literally took me out of the whole movie. Hell, that took me out of the movie before I saw the movie with the trailer. Because when I that whole time, that scene was in the back of my head going, we're going to show up, we're going to show up, we're going to show up. And I was like, oh, it kills more momentum for me for watching this movie. I know it's a nitpick. I know, but it was so... I hated it more, and I never cringed so hard in these movies as since Do Your Thing, Cuz. Literally take that scene of her being like, do your thing, cuz, and I'm like, I will take that scene over this.
Yeah, the do your thing cuz was a real head scratcher, because it's like, wait, now they're doing this twist. Like it feels like they didn't foreshadow this enough. Like there's probably a way it could have worked, and like the direction of like her joining the family becoming an antagonist is intriguing, but just the way the whole movie played out, like it really needed another rewrite.
Did no one give this a once over? I don't know. And I'm like, I know Alvarez can do better. I'm well aware he's a great director, but there's a part of me that's like, I'm afraid this might kill his career.
I know he's a producer, but yeah, like having this on his resume, it's like, I loved that Evil Dead reboot. It was so good, and it's like, man, look at this. It's like, this is a shame.
It angers me on so many levels. And like, And you know what's also infuriating? I saw Scream 5, and it was literally everything that this movie got wrong. That movie did everything right for a requel type film, even though, they do say, this is the 5th film, and they do reference all 4 films rather than try to be like, oh no, we're just going to skip over the past 3 sequels. But that movie literally did everything this movie could not, and it's so more infuriating. And I'm not even a Scream fan.
No, yeah, I'm a huge Scream fan, and I also enjoyed the 5th movie. The first Scream movie is my favorite, and like my least favorite is the 3rd one, which I find like just fine, just okay. And then the others are like Scream 5 is like in the middle 3. It's pretty good. Like it was very deconstructive, which got kind of eye-rolly in certain places because it would reference a certain movie and it was very obvious. I mean, they mention it explicitly, but overall it was just such a fun ride and I loved how it ended. So yeah, like this Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie really pales in comparison to Scream 5 and Halloween. And it's so weird because this, like, the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre was one of the forerunners of slasher movies, and to see, like, how all these sequels and stuff, like, just can't compete against the original, it's just so bizarre.
It's very much like I said at the beginning of this review, is like, even Tobe Hooper knew you couldn't replicate that movie. And it's, again, like, there are, for one thing it's going for is that there's not some nice cinematography. And if you're a gorehound, you are going to like some of the kills. Like, one person gets, like, Leatherface is in the remnants of all things, Red Lobster. And like, he grabs this dude and drags him into the kitchen and then puts his jaw, like, him on a meat hook, like you think in the movie, like, but it's not on the back, like in the original film. It's put through the lower jaw, and the hook comes out, and Leatherface starts raising the meat hook, and his jaw just rips off, and he falls to the ground. He's just making the most ungodly noises. I'm like, okay, I'll give you that one.
Yeah, the effects for that part looked really good. And I also got, like, really hungry during that scene. But yeah, that's marketing for you.
I had a desire for cheddar bay biscuits.
Oh yeah, those are so good. It's been a while since I've had them.
You know, did you know you can get the red thing to make them in like Walmart?
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, maybe I'll see what I can find and drop a link in the show notes for that.
Oh man, but like I said, outside of those two things, this movie is infuriating, and I know there are way more diehard Texas Chainsaw fans than I am.
What'd you think of the final showdown then? I guess we can get to that. Like, you know, we finally have Leatherface versus this version of Sally. What'd you think of how that played out?
It was literally trying to, again, replicate Michael and Laurie's fight, because Leatherface is back in the house, and Laurie's like, I called her Laurie. What's the difference? And Sally is like going through the scenes, like just kind of like literally going room to room, and I'm like, okay, now we're gonna get to a room to mannequins, right? Nope, room of bones. Not even as impressive as the original film. And yeah, the house burns down with Leatherface in it. I'm like, he's gonna survive, because of course they're gonna want to do a sequel.
Yeah, I mean, not only that, it also felt like a repeat of the beginning of Texas Chainsaw 3D with the house burning down and Leatherface somehow surviving.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, like, right before this scene happens, one of the other male surviving heroes comes in with his own chainsaw, and he goes, I'm the Lord of the Harvest. I'm like, that is so stupid, and it has no context, but, like, I will give them the little thumbs up for the quick reference to Texas Chainsaw 2.
Yeah, that old lefty line.
Yeah. So, yeah, and, like, the fight between, the problem is like, the final fight when Sally and Leatherface are fighting is like, it's so shaky cam and close up. I'm like, I can't see anything, and it's dark enough as it is. This is just a mess. You might as well throw mud on the screen.
Camera movements like that make it feel even less Like I know that people do found footage with shaky cam, but it somehow feels less real than the way the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre did it. Like, just hold the camera freaking still.
Yeah. Yeah, this movie was like, and sure enough, post-credits scene, Leatherface is alive. I'm like, oh, I couldn't be original for 5 minutes.
It felt like it was trying to top Halloween. There's even that moment where Chris Pine has a cameo, like Chris Pine of all people, and Leatherface like kills him and then cuts off his face and wears it for a little bit and then throws it away. I guess that's supposed to be a reference to the William Shatner masks in Halloween, kind of be like, oh yeah, we're better than Halloween, huh? When really they're just trying to replicate what Halloween's been doing.
Yeah, and it was equally infuriating. Like, Bill Moseley, like, this is the point where it's like, oh, he really is supposed to be the cook, where he's like, hey, brother. He's like, hey, heard you were out making noise, brother. And I'm like, oh, he's supposed to be Drayton, isn't he?
Yeah, like, with the timeline and everything, it just didn't make sense. Like, maybe it was not as nonsensical as Texas Chainsaw 3D's timeline, but it was still really infuriating.
Yeah. This movie sucks, man. Like all the movies we've reviewed on this podcast, I would go, like, even our lowest scored ones, I would go back and watch over this.
Yeah, and the music by Colin Stetson, while watching the movie, there were moments that stood out to me, but after the fact, it's like, I'm not sure if this was his best work, really.
Yeah. It's infuriating. It's mind-numbing, and I would literally, like, now, I would probably take, if I had a gun to my head and be like, okay, you gotta watch either this movie or Next Generation, I'd be like, Next Generation, just for Matthew McConaughey.
Wow.
I would literally just take it because it's so meme-worthy.
Yeah, and Next Generation does have that, like, as much as it sucks, it still has that aesthetic where it's kind of, like, it feels dirty, not to the point of the original, but it feels like it's trying to feel like that in some places, so I guess it at least has that going for it.
Yeah. I don't, like, I can't even find a right word. Like, and someone probably on the podcast is watching going, really, he's that upset about about a horror movie? I'm like, yes! You've got to put effort in these films, especially with such a huge legacy, like the movie you're trying to do a sequel of. Am I wrong? Am I being overcritical here?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I know slashers in general are kind of dumb, but we've seen in recent years how there can be good slasher movies, like, you know, Scream, Halloween, and with a legacy franchise like this, like, why couldn't they try that? Like, really try to be innovative and not try to write off the coattails of the original, even more so than others, but in a way that just doesn't feel like the original. Like, it just boggles the mind. So I guess we can go into final thoughts and score out of 10 and unit of measurement. So what are your final thoughts, score out of 10, and unit of measurement for Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2021?
Freaking screw this movie, man. That's my final thought. My rating is 3 meat hook jaw ripoffs out of 10, and I'm being generous.
This one is really far down there. It's like the franchise has gotten really low before, like we've said with Next Generation and with the Leatherface prequel. I still think Leatherface is my least favorite. That one's like a 3 out of 10 for me. But this one is like slightly above it, but below Next Generation, maybe. Like, it might even, like, elevate Next Generation a tiny bit for me, like, ever so slightly. So, I guess for me, I would give this particular Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie 3.1 out of 10 Red Lobster biscuits.
Giving him the 0.1 is just more generous than I am, my dude.
Yeah, but I think this is like the shortest gap that we've had when it comes to like really low ratings.
It might as well go all out, right?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the Leatherface prequel is 3.0, and it's still my least favorite. This one is like very, 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 very slightly above it for me, but really far below some of the other movies.
Yeah, I had hope, man. I want you to know that. I had hope.
I mean, even before seeing the trailers, I thought to myself, this is a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. It'll probably be bad, but maybe it'll be like a really messy, fun ride. And I did have kind of fun seeing how disastrous it got. But at the end of the day, the movie just disappoints compared to what it could be. You know, I don't know if there will be a follow up to this because, you know, the audience for this isn't as big as for other movies. So I don't know if the numbers did so well. So hopefully there's no more of these because like you've mentioned, like people just can't replicate the original.
This whole time I've just been angry about this movie, and now I just feel like there's just the anger burned out.
All right, well then I guess we can wrap up this episode. So thanks for being on again, Mr. Multiverse. Where can people find your stuff?
They can find me on YouTube and on Patreon. They can also check out my 2 books, or rather 2 short stories, and the 2 novels of Duel of the Monsters by Wild Hunt Press. And yeah, you want to check me out? Go there.
Nice. Yeah, like I think I've seen you post about those. They're like anthology books or with short stories.
Yeah, it's basically like just fun, gory monster fights. The 2 I did, the first volume, it was Jersey Devil versus Mothman, and then I got really out there with the second volume of Vampire versus Velociraptor.
Nice. Have you ever seen Velocipaster? That movie is hilarious. It's gold.
Dude, that movie is amazing.
Yeah, it's like so surprising how well made it is.
5 minutes in, I was like, this is my movie.
Yeah. I'll include links to all of that in the show notes. And yeah, I'll go ahead and plug in my stuff as well. You can find my book, Lemons Will Make Rain. It's on Amazon. You could go to stevenshinder.com for more info. And I've actually been making some good progress finishing up the next book, Trespassing Through the Visages. And I feel like taking a break from Delayed Replay really helped with that. And the show is going to be bi-weekly for this season. Something I considered for season 2, but there was like so much to talk about. But now it feels like this is a good season to make it bi-weekly. And a couple other podcasts with friends of mine, like one of them started bi-weekly, Just Two Lads. Another started doing bi-weekly last year, Intergalactic Peace Coalition. Yeah, like I think this is a good time. But yeah, I think that second book, I'm shooting for a summer release. So we'll see how things go. And I'll let people know if it comes out earlier or whatever. And you can follow me at Steven Shinder on Instagram and Twitter. Steven Shinder Storytelling on Facebook. And if you would like to email the podcast with your thoughts on movies, horror, slashers, whatever, like any of the things we talk about here, you can email delayedreplaypodcast@gmail.com. Let us know what you think about Red Lobster, I guess, or Buckethead. Like I'm really enjoying what I've been listening to of Buckethead. And you can also follow me and my dad's podcast, Yes Shift, where we talk about the band Yes. That's at anchor.fm/Yes Shift for the audio. Or for video, you can go to facebook.com/Yes Shift. We got an interview with Mike Tiano lined up, our second interview with him. He was like the webmaster for the band's website for a while. And we just interviewed Adam Sears from the band Lobate Scarb. He's worked with a couple Yes members. And we're trying to see if we can get Oliver Wakeman, a former Yes keyboardist, on the show. We actually messaged him recently and he said he's interested. So we'll see what comes of that. And yeah, so it's good to be back. And without further delay, have a good day.